from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program, live and national. If you want to join us on our late night town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. It's actually 8 minutes now. I guess I took longer in my open. 8 minutes past the top of the hour. And happy Monday, everybody. It was a great weekend for me. Hope it was a great weekend for you. And I want to get into a couple of things. Obviously, a big story that's trending throughout the day, the federalization of Washington, D.C., the home rule that President Trump announced earlier today. We have a clip of the president making that announcement. Listen to this.
Washington, D.C. should be one of the safest, cleanest, and most beautiful cities anywhere in the world. And today we're formally declaring a public safety emergency. This is an emergency. This is a tragic emergency. And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was, with graffiti all over the walls. It's another part of it, by the way, because we're talking about safety, but we're also talking about beautification. We have the most beautiful, potentially, capital in the world. We always had. But people come from Iowa. They come from
everything in Iowa. He's talking about Iowa. He goes into a whole lot of what is going on with D.C. And again, I talk about this a lot, and I'm going to underscore it with, I think this is part of the benefit of having someone with his background, right? When you are a politician, you tend to just get used to the status quo. And I speak from my own experience, having worked in government, and people that were there 15 years, 10 years, they would say things like, oh, that's just how it is, right? And I'll get into this in a moment, but something very similar, not very similar, but somewhat similar happened in Camden, New Jersey some years ago. And people were just beside themselves with, oh my gosh, how could this be? And it's beside me, right? I'm beside myself when I look at these things and think, why should we accept the status quo? Anyway, listen to the rest of what President Trump had to say.
Purpose, very serious purpose. Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening. They've done it.
So that's President Trump again making this announcement, enacting this home rule provision, and saying we're taking it back. We're taking it back. It's Liberation Day in D.C. Now, cue the attacks from the left, right? The left is saying this isn't about making D.C. secure. This is about his unfiltered racism. He wants to be racist, and now he's doing this in order to say he's doing it in the name, under the guise of law and order. Now, I don't tend to believe that because you can find black people that will say that they don't like the crime in D.C. And that's why I find comments like that very offensive. When people start to cry racism over everything, it really kind of, A, it cheapens the insult of racism for when there's really racism going on. But B, Why would anybody presume that because you're black, you somehow like crime? Why would anybody presume that because I'm Hispanic, I somehow like illegal immigration? People who work hard for a living and take care of their families, they want to feel safe. They want to raise their families in a safe place. They like law and order. That's a normal thing. And to try and politicize it, right? And I'm speaking in particular about a clip of a commentary that I saw from the daughter of Jorge Ramos, the Univision anchor. One of my friends, good friend of mine, is a big lefty, and she posted this. She was very happy to post this, and I watched, a little bit of it. And what I found interesting was, it was this true exposition. Right? She was there talking, at length, about how this was truly about, this had nothing to do with crime. This had everything to do with racism. They just wanted to lock up more black people. And this is why Trump is doing this. And there's a political advantage because in locking up the black people, it motivates his base. So it's his racist base, by the way. His racist base that includes the biggest gain in black male voters. The stuff, when you put two and two together, it just doesn't make sense. But this was the claim that she was making. And I thought to myself, some people do that because they're doing politics, right? They're spreading propaganda because this is what they do. But I really believe she, la pobrecita, the poor thing, she believed this stuff. She really believed that Trump is talking about law and order and making D.C. safer. Now, it may not be today, right? Today may not have been a high crime day in D.C., but since Trump took over, and even since Biden was there, I look at the news all the time. Do you guys remember when the FBI agents were carjacked? I do, right? All sorts of crazy things are happening in D.C., right? It's a tough neighborhood. The further away from the White House you get, the more dangerous it gets. So now that's not to say that every single dangerous and rough neighborhood is now going to be taken over. Trump has the ability to do this. He lives in the White House. Another person posited this. He's just setting the stage for authoritarianism. By taking over the D.C. police, he can now do what he did on January 6th, and the D.C. police will be under his control and command, and then they won't be able to stop him. This is the setup for a perfect, what'd they say, Trump 2028. I mean, people are just so creative. I was so tempted to write back to this person and say, hey, listen, you don't know me, but I'm good for it. I want to bet you $1,000 that doesn't happen. $1,000. If it happens, I will happily pay you in cash, check, whatever you want. I'll even do it on TV. I don't believe that to be true for a second. And every time I'm willing to make bets like that, I always win. Why? Because people thrive on their emotions. And then they start riding these emotional roller coasters without ever taking a second to stop and use logic and say, how does this benefit Trump if he's in effect doing these things? It doesn't. If that's all you're doing, if you're going to take over in 2028, this is not going to be a good look. More than half of the MAGA base isn't going to support something like that. I'd say more than half of America, writ large, isn't going to accept something like that. But yet, here we have that. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. There's also some developments coming out of Russia with respect to Ukraine and the upcoming meeting. And I want to get a preview on what we can expect with the Trump-Putin, I want to call it a showdown, but I feel like it's going to be a sit-down. And I'm hopeful that something positive will come out of it, as Trump usually does when he sets these types of things up. So we're going to get a preview on that coming up straight ahead with one of our favorite generals, General Blaine Holt. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You have to understand, This is a war that should have never happened. This is a war that wouldn't have happened if I were president. It would have never happened. It was the apple of his eye. I got along very well with President Putin. So this is really a feel-out meeting a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times, and I've been disappointed because I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. The money that's been spent and the death is incredible. It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened. You know, we had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. Would have never happened. So I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck, and that'll be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled. I mean, there are those that believe that Putin wanted all of Ukraine. I happen to be one of them, by the way. I think if it weren't for me, he would not be even talking to anybody else right now.
That, of course, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th President of these United States. And I tend to share a similar view. I know many don't. Many think this has to do with biolabs and encroachment from the Ukrainian people seeking membership in NATO. But I think if you look at the documents, in particular the document on the Russian Empire that Putin put out in the summer of 2020, maybe 2019, 2020 or 2021, he was very clear on restoring the footprint of the former Russian Empire. Now, I don't know if that's just bluster, but he put it in writing. It's still on the Kremlin.ru website. So I have to kind of take him out of his word when he puts it in writing. And that could be tongue-in-cheek. I mean, this is politics and geopolitics and warfare, so anything's possible. But I guess the question we all have is, are we going to get peace? Are we going to see the granddaddy of corruption that, I guess, exiled their corrupt people to Ukraine and had them formulate this country and all the stuff that they had combined with deep state interference over the years? And now you've got a quagmire of corruptness between Ukraine and Russia. They're killing each other. They're taking each other's real estate. It's an ugly situation. And I'm wondering, does it end? And does it end for long, right? Does it end permanently? To get those responses and some analysis on that stuff, I want to bring in one of the pros. He was the United States Deputy Representative for NATO, U.S. Air Force General, retired, Blaine Holt. Welcome, sir.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me back. What a huge week it is, Rich.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you. I mean, I didn't think we were going to get to this point, honestly. I thought that Putin would continue. And again, it hasn't happened yet. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But I felt like he'd keep talking and not showing up. So what do we make of this? Is this Putin trying to put on a show for the world stage to say, hey, look, I'm willing. It's the little guy Zelensky that's not willing. Or is this really him saying President Trump garnered a tremendous amount of leverage in his most recent deal, getting $750 billion in the European Union to purchase that much in American energy, and he keeps coming after us financially, and it's going to start to hurt if it's not already starting to hurt, and we can't do that, so let's make a deal. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting to the crux of where this thing starts to get to a better place, and that is you've got a European Union. I'm not glorifying Putin as some sort of reasonable contestant in this formula, because he's not. But you've got the European Union that wanted to largely, since President Trump took office, follow the exact same doctrine of more money, more weapons. We're confident that Ukraine can repel and defeat the Russians, which is nonsense. It's just insanity. But this thing goes back to 2014 when Victoria Nuland was a was a younger woman, and John McCain, her mentor, and the neocons stood by while the Maidan cooked revolution happened.
Let's talk about that, General. Let me ask you your opinion. My opinion is that this was Black Ops, CIA, America had their hands all over it. Am I wrong?
Well, you just stole the words right out of my mouth. I mean, they even admitted as much with their 12 secret bases in the Wall Street Journal article that came out a year ago. In other words, President Trump inherited a mess that was started when I was still on active duty. And when I was on active duty, after Maidan happened, well, then very predictably, 10 months later, we got the little green men and the loss of Crimea, because Russia was not being listened to and the Minsk Accords were not being adhered to. And Hollande and Merkel, France and Germany, scoffed as much and said that was all just a ruse. We wanted to build a Ukrainian military that was going to go on and fight Russia. Well, here we are. We're closing in on the 2 million dead mark. Russia is bearing down militarily because it has many millions more to throw at this thing, and Ukraine is out. I'm not making light of the Ukrainian effort. Good God, they're very valiant soldiers at the ground level. But that pales in comparison to the mismanagement, the lack of strategy, the corruption, the absolute abject corruption that has surrounded this whole thing, and a Europe that is now pushing back on President Trump's very efforts to conclude this war with Vladimir Putin, who has his own reasons to want to end this war. Europe is still an impediment, as they have been from Inauguration Day, and they're still welded to more weapons, more money. We don't have either, by the way. And Zelensky is following their lead. Well, my worry going into Friday is simply this.
Well, General,
that
let's
there
leave a
could be
cliffhanger
a
there
sabotage
about your
effort
worry.
to knock it off.
Hold on. The music's going to play, and I don't want you to lose your thunder here. Folks, we're on with General Blaine Holt, and when we come back, we're going to talk about his worry about what goes on in this meeting with El Trompito and Comrade Vlad. So we're going to see what happens there. General, stick with me. Amigos, we're coming right back with General Blaine Holt, and, of course, your calls are coming up as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Is ceding Ukrainian territory still on the table?
Both sides, again, are going to have to agree to end this war. And, we've seen it in the past in other contexts where to get a line that both sides can agree to, certain, strategic pieces that benefit either side are exchanged in order to make sure that they can both defend their territory successfully. So, the technical people are talking, which is good news, because those are the ones that are going to say if land and what land would need to be swapped or exchanged. Certainly, I think, I took Zelensky's comments at face value, which is that no big chunks or, sections are going to be just given that haven't been fought for or earned on the battlefield. But I come back to where I started, which is, we need to this war to end. We could save thousands of lives with a deal. And I think that by both sides communicating, by President Trump meeting in Alaska on Friday with either one or both of the combatants, I think this is exciting. And I think President Trump's really the only one that could make this happen. He's the sole reason I think this meeting is happening on Friday. He's a peacemaker. He's averaging about a peace deal a month right now. We saw just this week where Armenia and Azerbaijan came together to settle their decades-long conflict. It's been a series of peace deals. And so, I think President Trump is best situated to see if a deal can be had and if both sides can agree to ending the slaughter.
That, of course, is United States Ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker. a guest on this program many times, and Ambassador Whitaker laying out his vision for what you think happens at the meeting this week and what exactly the stakes are. And I'm going to take a quick moment. Somebody else that's a frequent guest on this program also is in the news. E.J. Antoni being tapped by President Trump. Of course, E.J. Antoni is the resident economist of our program here every night. And I want to congratulate him on being nominated to become Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Congratulations, Dr. Antoni. Now, I want to get some reaction to what we're talking about right now with Ambassador Whitaker's idea for what happens this week. And we're going to continue the conversation with retired General Blaine Holt. He was a deputy representative to NATO when he was in the Air Force, and he's with us now. And General, before we left off, you mentioned your concern of what might happen this week at the Putin-Trump summit.
I did, but I want to parrot what you just said. I couldn't be happier for EJ to take that role. It's so critical, and he's got a big job in front of him, and he's going to do a great job. Same thing with Matt. Ambassador Whitaker is really operating in the way the president needs at NATO, and that's evidenced by Secretary General Mark Rutte's comments being more supportive of President Trump's efforts with Vladimir Putin. And that's kind of where it stops. Now you've got my worries, which is if Wednesday's call with the European leaders and Zelensky, if they're not satisfied that President Trump is on the right track, is there going to be some sabotage effort that seems mildly disconnected, but then we all have to just suck it up and we're not going to have a big peace deal on Friday? I would say we're in that fragile a place because you have a whole band of European leaders that don't want to go back to their electorate and explain what deindustrialization, the loss of cheap Russian gas, the loss of their freedoms and liberties, and unchecked Islamic migration in the face of a fake climate controversy meant while they funded a war against the number one nuclear superpower. That's what they're facing. But President Trump's not interested in that, Rich. He's interested in stopping the killing. This can't go on. And yes, there's military realities, and there's also economic realities for Russia. And that's what he's going to go work in Alaska, a place where in 1867 the Russians and the Americans had a grand relationship. And then I think President Trump's going to go on to St. Petersburg or something like that and complete this smart effort to normalize Russian-American relations, which is to the benefit of the planet.
You know, General Holt, I remember a time at my tender 47 years of age where they said, if you elect Donald Trump, this will be World War III. It will be the end of everything. And yet here he is, you know, ending wars in all sorts of countries and now having a sit down with Putin. Albeit, I will say, you know, the critics are going to have a field day that he said he'd have this ended in 24 hours. Biden left him zero leverage to be able to do that. He had to get that leverage, and I think he's been able to garner that leverage. And now here we are. I think personally, I think you're right. The caveat you're saying, I think you're 100% spot on. And do we expect or will we see some sort of sabotage? I think that's guaranteed to be there. I think the question is really to what level, to what degree. Is it political or is it beyond that? And your thoughts?
Yeah, it could be beyond that. You know, desperate people do desperate things. We already saw, and you hit it so well at the start of this with this trade deal, which nobody could believe. President Trump shows up at his own golf course in Scotland, and in between rounds has Ursula von der Leyen and the leader of that country, Starmer, show up hat in hand, and they cut an unbelievable deal with the United States. Well, what that tells me is that there's contours of a bigger deal that Trump has brought Europe to heel, and he's now going to go fix this with Putin in a way that nobody saw coming. So in these final hours, these people who don't want to go tell their people we were doing the wrong thing for years and it got a lot of people killed, will they do desperate things? I'm worried about that. Maybe unnecessarily so, but as this strategist goes, I'm more like a mother hen looking at NATO and Europe and saying, oh, this could go really bad, but I do see what President Trump's doing, and it's the only way out of this thing. Honestly, it really is.
Well, let's take this apart a little bit. I think you're accurate here. I may not be as concerned as you are, but only because I know what the status quo is. They keep killing each other, and that's not good for anybody. But it's Trump can walk away with his hands clean and say, "Hey, look, I tried my best."
Mm-hmm. Sure can.
So I think ultimately here, if we use the "I'm a lover, not a fighter" mentality, which is I think what really President Trump always leads with, right? He leads with peace, and strength, but peace, and not the military-industrial complex. What does Putin want, and what can Trump help him get?
So what Putin wants, Putin knows he's not restoring the former Soviet Union, no matter what fantasy he wrote about many years ago. His army took 3 years to get to this place, which is not very far. At the conventional levels, the Russian army is not very good. It's very corrupt, and it has performed miserably. But they have infinite soldiers and infinite military resources to keep at this. Okay. Well, what Russian President Putin sees is a failing relationship with a failing Chinese Communist Party, North Korean soldiers that haven't been worth much, and the loss of access to global commons and coming deeper and deeper under Chinese and Indian influence who dictate to him what the oil price is. So in other words, his war is not sustainable, and he knows it. And so he's a smart man. He understands that he and Trump need to work something out because no matter what, he's got to get Russian access back to the world markets, back to European markets. Here's the good news. Europe needs him just as badly. Forget all the shadow fleets. They need cheap Russian gas because they've deindustrialized themselves, and that's the only thing that's going to appease a European people that have rolled back on Western democratic values and are failing economically at an astonishing pace.
So do you think it's outside of the realm of reason for Putin to ask Trump for the following? Hey, listen, with respect to tariffs, I will, you stop with this push on my gas. Let me sell gas to my peeps in Europe, and I will agree to pull out of this area or that area. And I guess the other part of the leverage would be the ongoing, right? The ongoing purchase of that fuel. Or is there another component that he'd want?
No, I think you've got it right. I think I would add in all of the natural resources, rare earths, metals, and then they're going to want to talk about privately the BRICS ambitions to replace the dollar as the world reserve currency. They're going to look for ways. Yeah,
right, do you think that's a deal that's on the table?
I think it's something that they're going to have to hit on, but I think the BRICS are at each other's throats right now because they're all ailing. But I do think that President Trump's going to reassert American dominance and leadership in this. And I believe President Putin has every reason to say, I'm going to work with you, but you've got to let me save face with my people so that I can go forward and maintain my position as the strong man in Russia. And I think they'll work through that because I do think that President Trump understands that mindset and his archetype.
Sure. So that's two of the three people. Now we have Zelensky, and I want to get your thoughts on how his off-ramp is. Stick with me, General. Amigos, we're coming right back with General Blaine Holt. He was the United States Deputy Representative to NATO for the United States, and we'll be right back with him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
want to say thank you for what you do. You people speak the truth.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're on with retired Air Force General Blaine Holt. Blaine Holt is a Newsmax contributor. You could see him all over the place. He's great with his geopolitical analysis, and mainly because of all the time he's spent out in the field as the United States Deputy Representative to NATO and during his service to our country. And he's with us now. General, we left off with my question to you. We've analyzed Trump, we've analyzed Putin and what they might want, whether it's BRICS or energy deals. And now Zelensky. I know in the past, at least from my perspective, Zelensky has been problematic in trying to get to a peace deal because, in my opinion, this makes the most sense for him. And I think you agree with that.
Yeah, he's in trouble, Rich. He's in a lot of trouble. Recently, he did something that was so noticeable, it caught the negative attention of the European Union and Europe leaders, and that is he shut down two organizations inside his government that were supposed to be responsible for monitoring any corruption from the amount of aid and money that were flowing into the country. Now, we're not Boy Scouts here. We understand there's been a lot of corruption. But by shutting them down, he sent a clear message to Europe, not just the United States, that he's not up for the scrutiny. He doesn't want them involved. And if you start to add it all up, he's got problems internally and politically, not just from terrible forced conscription measures on the streets of Kiev and other places, but also just, he's delayed elections long. He's turned his back on the church and locked it up from Ukrainians. And Ukrainians, with they're not getting anywhere militarily. So now to not follow President Trump's leadership for a way out, it's a very bad play for him because the Ukrainian parliament itself is demanding answers from him, and they are so close to replacing him. So what happens to Zelensky if he can't make it through this? You have to wonder, well, what has he got in play? Is he playing for just to maintain his position, or is he playing to save his neck? And I would argue that it's the latter. Ukraine's not very pleased with where they've arrived at this moment in time.
I agree. So what are the options? Does he fall in line and play ball? Does he do something drastic? How do you read the tea leaves?
I think if there was anything, and I have advised the Ministry of Defense in Ukraine and my dear friends there who I've known well beyond this war, if there was something that I could help advise him on, it would be follow President Trump's leadership. Don't stop fighting him. Stop looking for the visible moments where you align yourselves with the EU leaders that can promise you weapons and money and deliver on none of it, and start looking towards what the end game looks like. When he stands up and says, we're not going to yield on any land whatsoever, what you're saying is we're prepared to fight to the end, to the last soldier we have in our military, because there's no chance to repulse the Russians at this point based on the military realities over the last 3 years. We can all argue who's responsible for that, but I will say, and I'll take a moment to say, that the Ukrainian military has performed with what they've had spectacularly. They have been amazing, but it's not helped that the Biden administration slow leaked logistics. There was no strategy, no end game, no diplomacy anywhere near. It was write checks until the cows come home. And you see neocons like Lindsey Graham only too willing to continue that formula infinitum because of their bloodlust to kill Russians. But the Russians aren't going anywhere. That's the reality. Russia's staying. They're not going to Mars. They're not leaving. We have to deal with them, and they've got more nuclear weapons and more advanced nuclear weapons than anybody on the planet. So we have to get to a different place than what's been done.
Really well put. General, we're going to leave it here. and see what happens. And I'm going to twist your arm to have you back to give us some post-mortem
Always.
on the summit on Thursday. So
Absolutely.
looking forward to it. Thanks for making yourself available and being a patriot. General, tell everybody where they can find you.
Find me on Twitter or X at _irascible. I'm always at Newsmax, and I write a column there, and I'm always up for a debate anytime, anywhere, any place, and thank you so much for having me.
You bet. My pleasure. Godspeed to you, sir. And amigos, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company this Monday night. I want to get to our buddy here in Idaho, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Let's go to our buddy Pablo. Go for it, my man.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty interesting what's going down. Don't forget their main negotiator for Russia is Sergei Lavrov. He's been doing it a long time. He's very good at it. Our Secretary of State's got his work cut out for him, but he's an able man and he knows what he's doing, and he's got a lot of trust from Trump, so I don't have that problem. But there's a lot of little things that they're going to want to bicker over about who gets what. And I think one of the main things that Putin wants to keep is that 20,000 kids that he stole from the Ukraine, to want them to grow up to become Russian kids so that they never knew that they were actually Ukrainian kids. And that's just one thing. Holt, General Holt, he mentioned the rare earth policy, and that's where that meeting in the Oval Office spun out of control the last time with Zelensky. I don't have a lot of faith in that guy. I think he's a loose cannon, and there's a lot more I've sort of written down, but I'm not going to get into it. I just, it's just a tedious process, and you got to dot your I's and cross the T's and trust that the plan that you got is the one that's going to be the winner. And I really enjoyed Holt. He brought a lot of flavor to his conversation, and a lot of it just made a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it was really easy listening.
Thank you. He's great at that, the General. Paul, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, my man. And amigos, we continue with more conversation. Lots to discuss. The federalization of D.C. police. What's that all about? Is it about crime? Is it about cleaning up the Capitol? Is it about making sure D.C. is safe for, I don't know, potential high-profile arrests? Who knows? Anyway, we're going to get into that and a whole lot more. And if this is the end of the road, hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S. Happy to be here with you this Monday night, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. We're back for another hour, keeping you company. And here's the number if you want to join our late night town hall conversation all across the country, 833. What's the number? 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And a few things I want to get into. I mean, there's obviously always a bunch of headlines going on each day. I try to give you the ones that are, still developing or the biggest ones of the day. But let me see. The D.C. crackdown, that's a big one. We're going to spend some time on that this hour for sure. I also want to get into a couple other things because, it's important, I think, to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening politically. Now, one of the things I want to do, and it's not the top order of business, but it's definitely of importance to me, is to with a little bit of chagrin, right? We congratulate Dr. E.J. Antoni on his nomination to become the Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Of course, E.J. Antoni, Heritage Foundation economist, chief economist there, who has been our resident economist on this program, as well as some other great local programs. And, you know, happy for him, happy for America, sad to see us lose him. And I can only say, you know, we've had a few really, really good regular go-tos over the years. You know, we had Kash Patel. Now he's in the FBI. We've had a number of people. Now we've got E.J. Antoni. He's going away. And Matt Whitaker. Now he's an ambassador, right? There's a few of them out there. And while they need to serve America, it was nice, you know, being able to call on them to have them join us on this program in our late night national town hall conversation. So kudos to him. Now, and of course, I say to my chagrin because, you know, El Trompito offering these deals. He's making deals that people can't refuse, right? And how do you say no to El Trompito? So kudos to everybody there. But I want to continue this conversation because speaking of El Trompito, you've got a guy named Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani is the madman running for mayor in New York City. Now, I say he's a madman because he hasn't talked about helping New York. Right? New York has a crime problem, and he says we have to defund the police. Somebody goes and shoots up a bunch of people in an office building, and then he says we have to have a conversation about the police. Right? This is a quintessential politician. He calls to defund the police, and then he takes private security, armed private security, with him everywhere he goes. Then, because he's a candidate for mayor, he gets approved for a detail, a black SUV and some police officers to go with it. And he happily takes that. And listen, nothing wrong with taking that. But the issue is something wrong with taking it when you're calling to fire these people. So it's okay for him to have armed security, but not for anybody else to be able to call 911 and get a cop, right? Like the poor lady who was burnt to death on the subway, or the people that are shoved off the subway platform right into oncoming trains, or the people that are being stabbed on the subway right in the back or slashed in the face. All of these things actually happen in New York City. And of course, Jessica Tisch, the police commissioner, will turn around and release a report and say, well, look, according to government data, we are having one of the safest years ever. You've got to find a place to show that kind of face, right? You really do. To sit here and say, look, we're doing better than where we were, so let's celebrate that. Listen, when people are being treated the way they are, right? It wasn't that long ago that little kids were overdosing at a daycare from fentanyl. Now, I can't blame the government for the unscrupulous behavior of a daycare facility and what they did, which was heinous. But I can blame the government for cooking the books or for not focusing on what needs to be focused on and celebrating minor successes like less people were murdered. That's great. But let's focus on, the fact that people are still being murdered. And you can't eliminate murder, but you can curtail it in a higher degree. And you're not going to do that by overworking the cops you have, giving out the overtime that you have, stretching them thin, and not hiring more cops. That's not the winning solution. But this is what they do in New York, right? So Zoran Mamdani, he's running against Curtis Sliwa, and of course he's running against two Democrats who are trying to come for his lunch as well. But who does he decide to come after? He decides to come after El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th President of these United States. Check this out.
Beginning with Manhattan, beginning with the electeds who have shown us what leadership can look like in this borough. And we begin it because we know that there is no borough that will be free from Trump's cruelty. We will feel the pain of this legislation, whether we are in Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, or Staten Island. And we will shine a light this week and every week on the costs of this vision that is coming out of Washington, D.C., and the necessity of...
Mamdani, again, he's going to try and run against Trump. And I've seen this strategy work. Bob Menendez was elected by running against George W. Bush. There were Republicans running against. He ignored them. He ignored the Republicans, ran against Trump, and it worked. Now, I'm going to say for Team Mamdani, this is a strategy that may work. It may work, right? Because if you don't address the issues and you just go after the straw man that you're creating, right? You're bad guy. You're going to try and burn Trump in effigy in order to get elected. It may have a positive yield. Why? Because Trump's going to fire back. And he's going to say things he's already said. And I'm not saying he shouldn't say them. He should. Everybody should be talking about Mamdani and letting everybody know how bad of a decision he is. But the reality here is this isn't working, right? What they do doesn't work. When you look at the fundraising haul that we just saw this last quarter, who was the number one fundraiser of all four of those candidates qualifying for matching funds? It was Curtis Sliwa, the Republican running, beating Mamdani by $300,000. I'll say that again for the people in the back. Curtis Sliwa outraised Mamdani, $1.6 million to $1.9 million for the quarter. So what does that mean? That means the deep pocket lefties, at least last quarter, weren't very interested in Mamdani. Then today, article in the New York Post. John Catsimatidis, who was a big supporter of Curtis Sliwa in the last election, became fond of the sitting mayor, Eric Adams, and was bankrolling Adams. And guess what? He just held a fundraiser for Curtis Sliwa in the Hamptons over the weekend. So now this is in addition to Sliwa already outraising this guy. Now you've got one of the biggest billionaires in New York City that's very politically active, John Catsimatidis, who's been on this program, by the way. Now he's helping Curtis, as having him as a special guest at his meeting in the Hamptons. Signaling what? He's hedging his bets. Why? Because he realizes that Curtis can win. Last week, Errol Lewis, who is a left-leaning journalist in New York City, Errol Lewis says this is for Sliwa to lose because he has at least 20-some-odd, 26, 27, 28% support. And when you combine that with the 70% that these guys are fighting over, he comes out on top. So this is a very interesting scenario where there's a probability, in my opinion, I'm not a mathematician, but the probability for Curtis Sliwa winning this election is genuine. Now, I've heard even other critics of Curtis Sliwa's say that the same thing. Most often they say things like, I can't believe that people are actually taking this guy in his red hat seriously. It's because they haven't gotten to know Curtis. And I understand. It is hard sometimes. If you make a lot of jokes on the radio and, you have an eclectic style like Curtis does, I think you're going to see him as a jokester. But if you ever meet the guy and you've spent any amount of time with him, you'll see that he commands the respect of so many people across every political spectrum in the city. He's what a leader is. People look up to this man. He's supported law and order forever and a day. So, again, not to turn this into a stump for Sliwa, but it's really to highlight the importance of doing what's right in New York City so that we don't end up like D.C., which is now facing a federal takeover. And I want to get into that straight ahead. So keep it locked right here. We're going to discuss some of that with somebody that was in the National Guard and was there when the president at the time activated the National Guard to quell the riots in Los Angeles. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States. I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
That, of course, President Trump earlier today at a press conference announcing the federal takeover of Washington, D.C. because of crime. I want to get to the bottom of that. Of course, reaction from all over the place. Pam Bondi at the press conference following President Trump making a very bold statement that crime in D.C. is ending today.
Let me be crystal clear. Crime in D.C. is ending and ending today. We are going to use every power we have to fight criminals here. President, thank you for caring about our capital. Families come here every summer. Our museums are free. We have the National Zoo. We have the National Gallery. D.C. should be a place where everyone can come and feel safe.
That, again, Attorney General Pam Bondi. And I've been to the D.C. Zoo. Beautiful. I went there with my kids when they were young. Had a great time. Anyway, so this criminality, will it be stifled? Will it be curtailed? I think so. We've seen it happen in Los Angeles recently. We've seen it happen in Los Angeles years ago during the Rodney King riots. And somebody that was there at the time is going to join us because this is, I want to get their perspective, right? The perspective of somebody who's served in government, somebody who served as a guardsman during the LA riots, and somebody who serves as the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Chuck DeVore, welcome, sir.
Hey, great to be back with you.
You bet. Welcome back. And I want to get your take on this stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff going around. I'll give you the takes that I've gotten, which are basically people are saying this is Trump preparing for massive arrests that he needs to have control of the city for. There's others saying that this is President Trump trying to eliminate crime in Washington, D.C., and others that are saying all sorts of crazy things, that President Trump is just preparing for another authoritarian takeover, and this way he can control the law enforcement response to the next January 6th. I tend to think he's on the level here, but what say you?
Well, the first important thing to understand is that Washington, D.C. is a federal district. It's not a state, and so it's got different rules. It was created specifically to be the home of our national capital. And as a result, the governor of D.C., in effect, is the president. It's kind of an interesting situation where the president has a dual role. He is the commander-in-chief, of course, for the United States Armed Forces and their federal role. But if he so desires, he also is commander-in-chief of the D.C. National Guard, equivalent to how a governor is the commander-in-chief of their National Guard when they're not federalized. And so that's the starting point, because people are going to get all messed up over posse comitatus and,
right,
Title 32 and Title 10, et cetera, et cetera. During the Los Angeles riots, I was called up as a California Army National Guardsman under first Title 32 by then Governor Pete Wilson. And then a few days into it, I was federalized. So at that point, President George H.W. Bush federalized the National Guard, about 10,000 of us in the city at that point. And for several days, we were on federal active duty under Title 10, along with 4,500 Army and Marine Corps, assets that came into the city, for a total of about 14,500 troops in the 1992 LA riots.
Folks, we're on with Chuck DeVore, former California State Assemblyman and National Guardsman in California while he was there. And Chuck, this is, again, a great point that you bring up. Obviously, the president not really having to go through too much to do this. He has the ability to do it because he is the de facto governor of D.C. if D.C. were in fact a state. I think the big question people have, or I guess the big controversy that's circulating in the media, at least what I'm seeing from the left, is saying that he's doing this not for law and order, but doing it to advance political causes. Give me a minute or so on that.
Well, I mean, first of all, you can't completely disentangle the two, right? It's good politics to have good law and order. I think
True.
the Democrats kind of lost the plot on that with their whole defund the police narrative that really, I think, cost them quite a bit insofar as elections and political power. So let's just, put right out there on the table that people like it when they're not at risk or they're at lower risk of being assaulted or murdered in their hometown or whether they're a tourist in the town. So let's just say that law and order and good politics go hand in glove with this case. The second thing is, people just need to chill out, right? I mean, what we're talking about here, at least initially, is about 1,000 D.C. Guard members augmenting about 3,300 sworn police officers in D.C. These are people who can use our help. And this is under new U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, who has vowed to get tough on crime because unlike in other big cities, many of which have been taken over by Soros district attorneys that refuse to prosecute criminals, that let them go immediately, but let them out on bail, again, in D.C., it's kind of unusual because the equivalent of the district attorney in D.C. is a U.S. attorney appointed by the president. And so, we're kind of done with having the soft on crime Biden folks. Now it's the tough on crime Trump folks.
Understood. Really good point. Straight ahead, I want to talk about the response from the police. Do they support what President Trump is doing? Do they not? And what do the citizens think? We've got reactions from both coming up straight ahead. Chuck DeVore, stick with us. We're coming right back with Chuck DeVore from Texas Policy Foundation. And, of course, me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
That crime in the District of Columbia is out of control and something needs to be done with it. We have to go back to how we got here, though. In 2020, the D.C. City Council passed an enormous amount of legislation that handcuffs police officers, exposes them to administrative, civil, and even criminal liability, even when they do their jobs properly. And now, 5 years later, our authorized sworn strength is 4,000 sworn police officers. We currently have 3,180. So we have more than 800 vacancies for the position of police officer. And the way the department makes up for that gap is through 2 million hours of mandatory overtime every year. So the fact that we need help from federal law enforcement and maybe even the National Guard, it shouldn't come as a surprise. And we agree with that. I think one of the issues here, though, is that we all know that's going to be temporary. So in order to fix this problem and make sure that it doesn't ebb and flow and that the feds come in and we lower crime and then they leave and we're left holding the bag, it's very important that people know that there is underlying legislation that needs to be corrected so that we can actually properly staff this police department in order to properly police the city.
That is Greg Pemberton. He's the chairman of the D.C. Police Department Union. And he says he welcomes and echoes what the president is saying, just like people in the neighborhood are doing. We have a clip of that. We'll play that in a moment. But I want to continue our conversation with Chuck DeVore from the policy perspective, because this, I think, is an interesting take, right? A lot of times you wouldn't hear police say that, yeah, we want to get taken over. But here it seems like they're obviously acting in the public good and they actually need the help. Chuck DeVore.
Yeah, and again, a lot of parallels to Los Angeles in 1992 when you heard the leader of the D.C. Police Union talking about their shortfall of sworn officers. It was a little over 800 people. And if you look then at the current size of the force, that means they're just under 30% understaffed. Well, you go out to Los Angeles in 1992, they were about 30% understaffed at the time. And that's in a city that's traditionally understaffed by national standards and certainly by East Coast standards. The West tends to have fewer police per capita than does the East. So here you have remarkably similar situations where then the Guard was sent in to restore order. In the case of Los Angeles, I was on active duty, I think it was about 19 days to get the Los Angeles riots under control. Only about half that time was actually in Los Angeles. The other half was on 2-hour standby a few tens of miles away. But in the case of D.C., you've got about 1,000 people that the president is mobilizing that are in the D.C. Army Guard. And then you also hear the president getting support from other governors with their National Guard, the Virginia National Guard, for example. So other governors can voluntarily lend their National Guard to the D.C. Guard under the president's authority. And at that point, then, the federal government will pay their salaries, and they will come under the command and control of President Trump. And so you're likely going to see that because the D.C. Guard isn't probably quite big enough to do the job. And then here's another thing. There's probably quite a few D.C. Guard members who are themselves police officers within the D.C. Metropolitan Police. So obviously that doesn't help.
Right. Now, that's a really good point. With respect to that point, well, let's talk about other federal resources that are available that I think the president has made good use of in the past, like the Federal Protective Service or even HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. They tend to be somewhat flexible in what they can do. Do you see them playing a role in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw that in the 92 riots as well. I mean, all kinds of assets were surged into Los Angeles. Not only did you have mutual aid from other police departments around the Southland, around the Southern California, you also had the FBI, the ATF, the Drug Enforcement Agency. All of these federal agencies came in, and they had arrest authority. Now, similar to what I think we're going to see in D.C. and what we saw in Los Angeles in 1992, was you didn't see any arrest by the Guard of individuals. You saw at most individuals get detained and then handed over to the civilian police authorities to read them their Miranda rights and to make the proper arrest. And that's, of course, because National Guard members haven't been trained in how to do a proper civilian arrest. We're trained to use violence to dominate the enemy, to kill the enemy. And not so much civil defense or civil unrest, although we can do that mission as well. But again, when you have law enforcement officers in a dangerous situation, maybe they'll go out with 2 officers. Well, when you have a bunch of National Guard officers, soldiers around, you can send out a police officer by himself, backed up by 1 or 2 members of the National Guard with their rifles or their sidearms. And that way, the police officer knows that he's got his back protected. You saw that, by the way, a couple of months ago in Los Angeles when you saw the anti-immigration enforcement riots get out of control, and you saw people try to hurt federal law enforcement. Well, when the president called up members of the California Army National Guard and augmented them with some local Marines, you saw that baloney in very quickly, and the military never made an arrest. They may have detained a few people, but they handed them off to civilian law enforcement to make the proper arrests and to Mirandize them.
Very good. So, excellent points. Now, Chuck DeVore, how long do you think this is going to last?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question because when you hear the head of the police union talk about the systemic 800-plus shortfall of sworn officers needed to get the force up to 4,000. It may be a while because the D.C. City Council and perhaps the mayor as well, who seems to be kind of between a rock and a hard place politically, they haven't allocated the money to grow the police department like they should be. I think they're still kind of in the defund the police mode. And so at that point, the federal government may have to assert more of its authority. D.C. home rule is at the sufferance of the federal government. It's up to Congress and the president as to just how much home rule we want to give D.C. And I think it's important for people to understand this is the nation's capital. This isn't just a city. It's the nation's capital. And when you go there to either petition redress of grievances before Congress or to visit the wonderful monuments and memorials and museums, you have every reason to believe that you're going to be safe there with your family, and that's just not the case today.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember there's a whole reason the Capitol is on a hill, right? We were attacked. They burned things down in the past. It's a national security imperative as well.
Well, it absolutely is. And of course, D.C. is also a place that has, by some accounts, the highest per capita number of spies of any city in the world. So, yeah, it's a place of intrigue, but it also needs to be a beautiful place and a showcase for America's democratic republic and for our constitutional rule of law. And I'm expecting that President Trump is going to be able to restore that. The question is, can it be sustained? And does the D.C. self-government have the political will and the intention to sustain it and to keep the city clean and relatively crime-free?
We'll see. We'll see what type of deal. See if Trump decides to tariff Bowser, right, or some equivalent thereof. Figure out how to make her play with him. Anyway, let's get everybody some information about your organization, Texas Public Policy Foundation. If people want to keep up to speed, Chuck DeVore, with the work that you're doing today, how do they find you? Where do they go?
Yeah. So we're America's largest right-of-center state-based think tank. We're at texaspolicy.com in Austin, Texas, 2 blocks from the state capitol. We've got about 115 people all over the country, mostly in Texas, but all over the country. So we're a pretty large organization, been around since, 1989. You can follow me on X at Chuck DeVore, and I write a lot for the Federalist and for Fox News as well.
Outstanding. Amigos, follow Chuck DeVore. Keep up to speed with what he's doing. Chuck, thanks for being here with us. Godspeed to you, sir. Great to be with you. You bet. And amigos, it's your calls and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue the conversation with you guys, we the people, the American people. And I want to, I'm going to go to the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I just want to recap real quick, though. You've got President Trump coming in for at least a month, maybe more if he renews this Section 740 provision, where he's taken over D.C. He's alluded in the past to, maybe taking over New York. Now, I don't know how you would take over New York, but clearly he's got a handle on this that the rest of us don't, right? He's got the inside track. And I'm curious to know your thoughts. Is it a good thing or a bad thing taking over D.C.? I, for one, think it's a terrific thing. I think that this should have been done years ago. I remember when this happened in New Jersey, in a city called Camden, New Jersey, just quite somewhat similarly. It was interesting to me because the state police were under attack. They had gone in to help the locals. The locals were kind of absent. And what they ended up doing, and believe it or not, it was the idea of Governor Chris Christie, or at least it happened on his watch. They disbanded the citywide police. They, in effect, defunded the police and recreated a new police department with a different focus on community policing and all sorts of different things because it had gotten so out of hand. And honestly, it worked, at least from what we can see. Doesn't mean Camden's not still a hot zone, but it's definitely not the war zone that it once was. So this might be the beginning of D.C. turning a new leaf. I want to know what you guys think. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to Tampa, Florida, streaming the show on richvaldez.com. Let's go to our buddy Eduardo. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. I also think it's long overdue here. And not only does it have to happen here in the U.S., but over the weekend, and I got to talk to Stephen Moore, who agrees that he'll probably mention this to the president, and that is getting rid of Nicolas Maduro, because we need to clear that Darien Pass, because we're going to get all these human trafficking through South America and the other countries. And Mexico.
Oh, you're talking about the bounty that was put on Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, the president there.
Claudia Sheinberg, like Bill O'Reilly said, she can say whatever she wants to. We're going to be handling the cartels ourselves between the next 3-4 years, as long as President Trump is in office. So sorry, Claudia.
Yeah, I don't know if she's happy about that or not. Let's see what happens with that. And talk to me about D.C., your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that thing with the 19-year-old Doge member. I mean, I think one word that we need as conservatives use more is interracial crime, because the people that are being pushed into the subways, the beating in Cincinnati, the football player in Tennessee, these are all interracial crimes, black on white.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if they're categorized as hate crimes or not. You're right. This is an interesting thing that happens, and I don't know the animus for it, but I do know we shouldn't see any crime, let alone crime that's based on the premise of race, which is why there's those federal hate crime laws. And it always for years it's been an issue in the media, because they didn't want to make it look like they were demonizing any particular race, in particular black people. They tended to not ever mention race when it involved a black person. And that only cost them a lot of credibility, where people would read headlines, me being one of them. I would read a headline, and if it was a white person shooting people, they'd say, whatever, Bill Thompson, white, 42 years old, opened fire in a parking garage, blah, blah, blah. Right? And if it was a black person, similarly, it would never make any mention of the race. And after a while, you catch on to this and you go, what's going on here? And I don't think it's that they're laying cover per se, like trying to cover things up. I think it's they don't want to be at the tail end of getting sued or protested upon by Reverend Al Sharpton or someone like that. It's going to say, hey, why are you calling out black people? And that's because, and to me, the fault there is on Al Sharpton, right? It's on Al Sharpton for taking that approach, and it's on the media for just not having a standard. You want to have a standard. And in radio, the standard's a little different. I try not to talk about race because I don't think it's always relevant. But sometimes it's very relevant just because you can't see what's going on here, right? So in radio, you have to tend to be kind of descriptive, especially if you're talking about a topic that involves race and you have a white guest or a black guest or an Asian guest, and it's not, incredibly obvious because it's audio. So I get all of that. But I think you're right that there's a problem with crime. And if nothing else, we need to be honest about it. Eduardo, thank you for the call. Shout out to everybody in Florida, all of our many affiliates there. Thank you for listening. And I want to continue. Let's go to Denise calling us from Ridgefield, New Jersey, streaming the show on 1400 WOND out of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Denise, go right ahead.
I want to tell you about two places that a comedian in Wildwood that I used to work for said if they were going to give New Jersey an enema, they would shove it in this place. And there happens to be two places. I had to renew my driver's license. I couldn't go because my license expired, so I had to take a bus. So I had to go to Camden in order to take a train to Trenton. And both Camden, the train station where I had to buy a ticket, was so overwhelmed with drug addicts. At the entrance of the bus station, you couldn't even get in because they were just piling all over the entrance of the Camden bus station. Now I take the train to Trenton, and Trenton is 50 times worse. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a complete disaster. It was just I couldn't believe myself that I was in the state of New Jersey.
Was it this year or was this in the past?
About 4 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I was going to say I had a similar experience when I was down there during my time in the Christie administration, which was 2011 to 2013 or so. It was one of those years. I was down there, and I remember I was going to a 7-Eleven, pulled into the parking lot, and between where I parked in this relatively small parking lot and the front door, and what did it take me? 45 seconds or a minute max to walk from my car to the front door of the 7-Eleven. During the day, it was 11 o'clock in the morning, I probably saw 4 hand-to-hand drug deals and at least 5 or 6 people that had either were getting high or had just finished getting high and walking around like zombies. It is, you're not kidding, right? It is serious. And I worked in Trenton. I worked at the Capitol Complex. So I can tell you between the State House and there was a bodega I used to go to get my lunch where they had Puerto Rican empanadas. And you would find some of the people actually like passed out on the curb. Denise, very good point. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. I got to pause right here. Coming right back. Calls in Connecticut, Georgia, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let us continue. I want to go to Todd, Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Todd, go right ahead quickly.
Hey, yes, Rich, calling about New York and Washington. It's interesting that they call Trump, Hitler, but you got moron Zamdami in New York who's, he's not just a socialist, but he hates Jews and hates America, just like Hitler did.
Unbelievable. You're hitting the nail on the head there, Todd. You're right. And it's amazing to me. I mean, he's even been ambiguous, which to me, if you can make a comment like to globalize the intifada and not be clear that you denounce, what Hitler did in the Holocaust, then you're just as guilty. But there he is doing all of that, and he seems to be getting a free pass. We're going to have to continue to hold him to account. Todd, thanks for the call. Joe in Bethel, Connecticut. I was trying to get to you right now. The music means I got to go. If you can hang on, I'd appreciate it. I love to hear from our callers in Connecticut on WLAD. So we're going to get to you straight ahead. Amigos, we're coming right back. We've got more to discuss, plenty more from you all, the American people, and I'm happy to have the conversation with you. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Hey there.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Monday night. We're live and national. I get to give you another hour, and it's a pleasure to do that. Real blessing. Our phone number, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And big news today, President Trump federalizing the D.C. police and activating the National Guard to help put down some of the crime that's going on there, making D.C. safe again, as well as preparing for the sit-down with Vladimir Putin. And it's a big deal. President Trump nominating E.J. Antoni for Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after firing the last guy for cooking the numbers, according to him, rigging them. And again, that was the same commissioner that oversaw almost $1 million jobs being adjusted last year under Biden, if you remember that, I think it was 800-something thousand in 1 month when they said, oh, we had this many jobs. Oh, wait, we messed up. We didn't really have that many. How do you miscount nearly 1 million jobs? You don't. It's a lie to manipulate the markets and manipulate us, we the people. So we all know, if you've listened to this program and you've heard E.J. Antoni on here, I think you know that he's going to do a fantastic job. So kudos to E.J. Antoni, who I always say is our resident economist here on the program. Listen to this.
Breaking news as President Trump has appointed a new bureau chief of the labor statistics there. As we are learning more information here on Live Now from Fox of it, saying, I am pleased on social media, nominating highly respected economist Dr. E.J. Antoni as the next commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Our economy is booming, and E.J. will ensure the numbers released are honest and accurate. I know E.J. Antoni will do an incredible job in this new role. Congratulations, E.J.
Congratulations, E.J., indeed. And other news, you've got, speaking of D.C., right, because EJ's in D.C., we've got the citizens in Washington, D.C., please get the cut ready, of the areas that are affected by the crime speaking out on what they think of Donald Trump federalizing the police force and sending in the National Guard. Listen to this.
I've been saying that a long time ago. The federal government should take over the D.C. Police Department.
Leroy Thorpe is a native Washingtonian who founded the volunteer group Citizen Organized Patrol Efforts, also known as the Red Hats. They walk the streets of Chinatown doing violence prevention work.
With the mayor being in power so long, I think she's kind of used to how things are going, and I think Donald Trump really wants to clean it up, and I'm all for it.
So, again, that is Leroy Thorpe, community activist there, a real pillar in the community, speaking his mind. We've heard from the chairman of the D.C. Police Union also weighing in, saying the same thing, that they echo and support everything that El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, is doing in order to stop the all-out crazy policies that are in effect right now in D.C. And this is good. This is good that we stop with the pro-crime progressive policies that coddle criminals. We need to fix the political problem, which is these laws and these weak prosecutors, and at the same time take a tougher approach on crime. Now, I know that this is something that's not celebrated by all, and I know that because everybody has different perspectives. The other day, my daughter needed a repair on her car, so I went to a local mechanic, and I decided to wait while the repair was being done. And this guy's a real people person. Matter of fact, everybody in his waiting room, he will come over and introduce one to the other and conduct a little networking session. So while I was there, I met the economic advisor to the king of Netebeli, which is a kingdom of the continent of Africa that came from the Shaka Zulu time frame. And continues today. I met a woman who had done a documentary about her brother who was killed by her account, shot in the back by the Teaneck police. And part of what came up in this discussion of the people that I'd met was how police officers need to be held accountable individually and financially for things like what happened to her brother. Now, I commiserated with her and told her, look, I feel very badly about your brother. And I wasn't about to get into a political debate with this woman who was, grieving the loss of her brother. And it had been some years. But it was obviously a very personal topic to her. And I was just waiting for my car. But it makes you realize that these things are never that easy to slice. I could easily have said, well, listen, lady, if he was following what the cops told him to do, he wouldn't have got shot in the back. I could have, but that would have been, I think, insensitive and bad Christianity, if you will, right? It just wouldn't have been the right thing to do. Pretty douchebag thing to do, in my opinion. I want to hear her out, and I wasn't there to debate her. I was there to get my car fixed. But it got me thinking that when you have these particular policies, right, is that remedy that she's seeking, because she brought that up, She's seeking that because she was wronged and she feels wronged and she feels hurt by what happened to her and her family. And I understand that. I also don't believe that making a cop, an individual cop, go bankrupt is going to stop that. She would counter and argue, of course it's going to stop that, because cops will think 3, 4, and 10 times before ever pulling their gun out of their holster if they know they can lose their house, lose their wife, maybe lose their whole family because they lost their job. And then it comes back to me, and I do have a very pro-police perspective, having volunteered myself with the police and been to an abbreviated police academy. My brothers were cops. I support law enforcement through and through. Served as a police chaplain. I see the effort and the sacrifice that goes into that. But I also see the nuance. Remember that case? I think it was in Chicago about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. 15-year-old kid, Hispanic kid. He was in the streets at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Cop was chasing him. He was running through an alleyway. And the cop's like, freeze, don't move. Don't move. The kid moves, turns around, grabs a gun that's in like the small of his back. And as he pulls it out of the small of his back and it's in his right hand, it's pretty clear he's throwing the gun on the floor to maybe put his hands up, surrender, whatever. But in pulling the gun out, he gets shot. And I think rightfully so. And I don't want to say to anybody, hey, your kid should be getting shot by the police. But I will say, if you pull out a gun on a cop, you're going to get shot. That is a fact. And that's a rule I don't think we could ever change. We can't say, if you pull out a gun on a cop and, you're trying to surrender the weapon. No, don't surrender the weapon. Put your hands up. Right now, I get it. Maybe he'd never been in that position. He got nervous. It didn't go well for him. And I don't mean to be flippant about it. But I'm trying to point out the nuance of everybody involved in all these different sides. Anyway, I bring all of that up to say, ultimately, you have to err on the side of caution. And caution here tells us we have to back up the police, because it's the police that are backing us up. When you hear a noise in your basement, when you hear a window break, when you hear someone in your house and they're coming to steal your stuff or worse, hurt you or hurt your family in the middle of the night, there's no time to talk about, hey, I want the officer that's going to think 3 times, 10 times before he pulls the trigger on this bad guy. No. I want the cop that's coming in, kicking the door down. Hopefully, he goes to the gym a lot more than I do. His arms are 3 times the size of mine, and he's about to put this guy down and make me and my family safe again. That's my thought. So I think kudos to President Trump for federalizing D.C. More on the rest of this stuff when we return. I want to talk about other instances of what's good and what's bad and nuance to situations. For example, we've seen Stephen Colbert. Colbert is no longer going to be re-signed, right? He's not going to be in his role as the late-night host that he is. And it's the end of that show. Is this good or bad? Now, every time Colbert says something silly, I get a soundbite and I can react to it. So I will have less Colbert, presumably, right? Because Don Lemon went away from CNN, and I do get less Don Lemon audio, but he's still around if you find him on YouTube. But he's not saying the silly things he used to say. Matter of fact, he makes a lot more sense now that he's on YouTube. So what will happen with Colbert? Is this good or bad for America? I have my own perspectives, but I want to know yours. And we're going to hear what the Media Research Center has to say as well, straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to get to your calls momentarily, but I want to talk about this topic we're talking about, the media, right? The media is changing. We've seen a number of people no longer work in the big networks anymore. And I'm going a little bit back, right? Chris Cuomo has gone from CNN. He's over at News Nation. His political slant has become more neutral, somewhat neutral, since leaving CNN. We've seen others, right? Other big names. Don Lemon no longer at CNN. Brian Stelter was gone for a while. Now he's back. We've seen Tiffany Cross leave MSNBC. Joy Reid, most famously, leaving MSNBC, as well as many others. Allison Camerata, no longer, I think, at CNN. And there's quite a list. And other moguls in the media, right? Like late night sensation, Stephen Colbert. And I say sensation because, I know it ticks some people off. But he's not getting re-signed, right? His program is canceled, saying that it loses 40 or 50 million a year. Others are saying that he was so effective in being a champion for left-wing causes, speaking truth to power, that it was Trump's political pressure on Paramount trying to sign a deal that forced Paramount to put him out. Others being me, would say they played dirty. Trump sued them, won in court, and they had to pay him a settlement. Colbert got butthurt about it, said bad things about Paramount, and then they said, hey, by the way, we were looking the other way on you losing all this money, but you're not working out for us. Who knows how it went? I don't know. I don't wish him any ill will. I actually used to really enjoy his show, The Colbert Report, on Comedy Central. I work at night, so I don't really often get to see his show unless I catch the tail end of it after the show. And it's only been a few months that I don't work till 1 a.m., right, in the morning in Eastern time. So long story short, we're going to get to the Colbert stuff. But another huge icon, somebody, who is in my business, radio, shock jock Howard Stern, also now not getting re-signed. Some saying he's taking it easy, wants to walk away from radio. Others saying SiriusXM can't afford the $100 million per year on a 5-year deal. So that's $500 million that Sirius pays him because he doesn't command the ratings he used to when he had more popular opinions, I guess. He took the unpopular opinion of going against Trump. And it seems to me some of the Stern audience likes Trump. So those are my suppositions. That's what I surmise. But I want to get to the bottom of this. So first, we'll listen to a quick clip of audio with respect to Stern. And then we'll get some analysis on that. And I want to do that with our guest, Curtis Houck. Curtis, welcome.
Hey, always a pleasure, Rich. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir. Now, Curtis is with the Media Research Center. And, Curtis, we'll listen to this audio clip in a little bit so that I don't take away your time. But we have Howard Stern, and, again, a titan in radio. Titan, clearly the one making the most money. If everybody thought I was the one, wrong. Stern is crushing it. What do you think of Howard Stern no longer going to be top dog?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about. Even millennials, to a certain extent, of which I am one, you think of him. I remember the move to Sirius XM, and that was a huge, huge deal. The show being even on E! Network, highlights late at night would be on there. It's incredible to see the fracturing in the breakdown in his audience. And I think your earlier comments are exactly right, that I think a good part of his audience was alienated by this and in his conduct during COVID and his bizarre, grossly soft interview with Kamala Harris back during the campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Those are just a few things that I think have contributed to this cascading downfall of Howard Stern that I think he'd rather link up and shack up with Hollywood than the people, which, safe to say, got him in large part to the position that he's been in.
Yeah, good point. And I think this is where, in my unique position here, and I say unique only because I also host a radio show, is that I think sometimes what makes you good at what you do is the fact that you say what you feel, even if your position is nuanced or unpopular. And I wonder, was Stern doing that, or was he just being a contrarian on purpose? I don't know. I don't know that you can achieve the level of success that he did by intentionally being disingenuous. I think you're a genuine person. It pours through on the radio, and people dig that. So my thinking is that he really made a left-wing move at the fate of his own career, and he's
at a really bad time.
Yeah, right.
At a really bad time with the way media is fracturing and COVID and this Trump era. Yeah, it was definitely a bad time to kind of lose it.
Well, and I think it's also boomeranging, right? I think there's also, as we're seeing this AstroTurf push for leftism in the media, entertainment media, news media, it's not genuine. People, even Democrats don't like it, right? I know a bunch of liberals that are really not on board. Look, the Secretary of Health, Bobby Kennedy. I'm from New York. He used to host a New York radio show, and he's a lefty by all accounts. But he's not as far to the left as some of the people in the media today, which I find remarkable, right? So it's just interesting to see that the Democrats have lost their way in terms of politics. So I want to continue this conversation, and I want to add in Colbert, because I think Colbert and Stern are somewhat similar. There's an interesting parallel here, and I know you guys at Media Research Center always have your finger on the pulse, Curtis. So stick with me. We're coming right back with Curtis Houck from the Media Research Center, and, of course, your calls. We've got Connecticut on the line. Hang in, faithful. Thank you, Joe. Michael in Pendleton, Oregon, you're coming up as well. Tony in Montreal, I got 3-4 lines ringing, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And straight ahead, we come back with Curtis Houck, managing editor over at the Media Research Center. Don't go anywhere.
No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
President Trump is weighing in on reports that shock jock Howard Stern is about to be canceled.
What happened? He got terminated?
Trump and Stern used to be good pals. They even went on double dates with their wives. And Trump made 24 appearances on Stern's radio show.
I had lunch at Mar-a-Lago. I visited the ground. It is a beautiful place.
But Stern turned against Trump, and now they can't stand each other.
I used to do a show. We used to have fun. But I haven't heard that name in a long time. You know when he went down? When he endorsed Hillary Clinton. He lost his audience. He went down when he endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Stern's $500 million 5-year contract with Sirius XM satellite radio is up in the fall. And according to one report, he won't be renewed unless he agrees to a major pay cut.
All right, that's the report on Howard Stern. Is it because he turned his back on El Trumpito, or more likely dollars and cents? I don't know. I would suspect probably both. You're not getting the dollars and cents because you went against your base. But I want to get some reaction to that, as well as Colbert from our guest, managing editor at Media Research Center, Curtis Houck. Welcome back, brother.
Good to still be with you.
So talk to me. What do you think now? Is there a trend here with Don Lemon, who I like to call Don Limon, or Alison Camerata, or Stephen Colbert, or even this Howard Stern stuff? President Trump alluding to saying he's hearing about Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon also being on their way out. Is this a thing? Is there going to be a redo in the media to make it fairer and more in line with the American people?
I still think that a lot of these folks still don't get the picture. I think that's the unfortunate case here. Stephen Colbert, Don Lemon is still doing his thing, largely resistance nonsense. Alison Camerata started a podcast with former fellow Fox and CNN anchor Dave Briggs, and I've said on X that they've had some good moments, but it's largely just been kind of going back to viewing Fox News and MAGA world as animals behind glass at a zoo tapping on them. Stephen Colbert, in his case, I mean, he only has himself to blame. My colleague Alice Christie did a study looking at the guests for all these shows, and Stephen Colbert, since he took over as our beat writer right after Labor Day 2022, he has found 176 liberal Democrats as guests and only one conservative, and that was Liz Cheney before she made the full pivot to being a Democrat. Completely the full pivot. Other than that, I mean, it's just been completely ridiculous and out of control. He tried to hire Taylor Tomlinson for this After Midnight show after James Corden left. She only made it 2 years. 87% of her political jokes were targeting conservatives. It's just a disparity and a refusal to accept and want half the country to be viewers. The Michael Jordan adage of Republicans buying sneakers too, whether that quote was real or not, he lived by that moniker, even though, people said he was a kind of liberal guy or left of center, since at that time it was just standard practice to be a Democrat in North Carolina. And it just goes against what entertainment should be. It's political. You listen to sound bites of Colbert and Stern, it's angry. There's no laugh track. There's no punchline at the end. It's all just grievances. So CBS Paramount made the right choice to make this deal. They made the announcement about UFC today, right? That is a good business deal because they see that is something where people are interested and it has appeal. That they're going to spend billions on this instead of millions on a 200-person show that's not going anywhere.
Really good points. You raised several of them, both the macro and the micro. I guess I'll start with the micro. And again, Taylor Tomlinson, pretty good. I like her generally, but I feel like she's not placed correctly in this game show that she currently hosts. And it got renewed, then it didn't get renewed. So interesting point there that it wasn't enough. With the liberal guests, I would say I try to get liberal guests on this show, and crickets. Nobody answers. Nobody wants to come on with me when they're invited. I have an open invitation to AOC, All Out Crazy, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, and nada. So I'm wondering, do you think Stephen Colbert has that problem, that conservatives are just running away from him?
No, I know for a fact in a lot of these liberal cases, conservatives try to get on. I know the evening late night group therapy for liberals, the daytime version of group therapy for liberals, ABC's The View. I know for a fact there have been people like Ted Cruz that have tried to get on that show. Now, he's been on the show before. He's tried to get on since then. Hasn't happened. So I know it's not for a lack of effort. I know a lot of conservatives, firebrand types would relish that, but they don't have that. They'd much rather stay in their own silos. And I think that's really bad. And you also brought up, the former CNN Chris Cuomo, Fredo Cuomo. You watch his show on News Nation. It's one of the few networks where I can watch it with my wife without wanting to throw my remote at the TV, mainstream outlets, because it is, and of course I've never been on the network. Nobody's paying me to say this, but they are the network that is what CNN claims to be. A channel for all sorts of perspectives, but they're not. And Colbert, you're correct that he is, like Stern has squandered a huge opportunity because, yes, his Comedy Central show, whether you took it seriously or enjoyed the character that he was playing, had broader appeal. And now
I liked it. He made me laugh, and he was making fun of me half the time. Right?
Yeah. People enjoyed it for that reason. People came to either laugh at themselves or laugh at, the right. But it worked. It worked. And I don't feel like we're just wistful, like old men yelling at the clouds here. I really think there was something to previous eras. Trump has broken so many people, and the desire to politicize everything has trumped common sense. And you should realize that common sense does make you money. I think that should still stand for something.
Yeah, really good point. Now, Curtis, if people want to keep up to speed with the work that you and the team are doing at the Media Research Center, where do they go? Where do you direct them?
Yeah, newsbusters.org, newsbusters.org, at Newsbusters on X and Facebook, the Media Research Center on Instagram. We're celebrating our 25th year of Newsbusters, 20th year of 20 years of Newsbusters. We started in 2005, so we're going to have content this week, coming weeks, some fun ones that you may have forgotten about.
Outstanding. Well, congratulations to you on that. I know you and the team do an amazing job, and we're always happy to chat with you guys and, get the latest study, because you guys do amazing work counting things, right? You can come up with great numbers because you have the team and the facility to actually count and find out the percentages, and it's always so eye-opening when you have a report that says that they only gave, 2% coverage on this topic. So keep up the good work. You guys are rock stars. Thank you, Curtis.
Appreciate it, Rich. Anytime. Take care, folks.
You bet. And amigos, we come right back with your calls. Open phones across America starts right now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you disagree with me, you get moved to the front of the line. David, San Francisco, California, KSFO. Go right ahead.
Oh, thanks, Rich. I was more interested in the issue about what's happening in Washington, D.C. with Trump going after the evidence file of the police department. You remember...
what evidence file are you talking about?
Well, when Trump sends in his cadre of thugs to commandeer the Washington, D.C. Police Department, wouldn't he have access to all of the evidence that would be in the evidence locker of the Washington, D.C. Police Department?
Well, what, pray tell, is in this evidence locker that you would suggest Trump wants?
Oh, well, there'd be tens of thousands of different cronies that would want to have their charges dropped or evidence swiped or mislaid.
Now, David, I'm sure a man as smart as you, even though you are one of Karl Marx's favorite students and a quasi-grandchild of Bernie Sanders, even you would know that when you are the president of the United States, or even let's just say when you are a private billionaire like Trump was and is, you can make all sorts of moves in politics and in government. And, you don't really need to take over a police department in order to do all of those things. Why would anybody go through those lengths and make it so obvious? Wouldn't you rather do it where there's no fingerprints?
Well, do you remember when 1,000 FBI agents culled through the Epstein file to pull Donald Trump's name out of there, right? So now this is step two, going through Washington, D.C. and pulling all the evidence of maybe Don Jr.'s coke habit, maybe the whole variety.
Now, this is
different,
unsubstantiated stuff. Don Jr. doesn't have a coke habit.
Oh, I guess he doesn't, does he? And so all of the different crimes of Donald Trump's first term.
But again, let's back up. Let's just say any of this had any merit to it. Why would Donald Trump wait until 2025 when he got elected in 2016? I mean, it makes no sense to have waited all this time to do all of this cleanup in aisle 6 that you're talking about.
Well, he's committing crimes every day, and his cronies are
too.
too.
But he has impunity now. Why would he need to do all of this?
because there are state charges, there are federal charges. He can't give pardons for state charges, and District of Columbia is hypothetically a federal district.
Therefore, the pardons work.
We're talking about past, present, and future, right? So
last I checked, that's how presidential pardons work.
Well, that's a little surprising to hear.
You should see the ones that Joe Biden signed. He signed one that said, "This is for my son Hunter, for my brother Joe or Jim, for any crimes that potentially were committed between this date and anything in the future." Right? And that was part of the deal that Hunter tried to negotiate as well, which is why he had to end up getting the brother the pardon. So, yeah, I think you didn't do your homework on this one, David. David in San Francisco, always a pleasure, my friend. My best to Karl Marx and Engels as well. Folks, we continue. Let's go to Joe, Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD. Joe, go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Valdez.
Good evening, Joe.
Finally, I was going to say I am so impressed by how you handle a nasty, a criminal, or a prejudiced call, and you just did.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. I appreciate it. I don't know how we do it. We just do it. It must be in my hair. What do you think about Stephen Colbert, Joe?
I don't know too much about it, Mr. Valdez. Maybe you could give us your opinion.
I'll tell you the truth. Look, I'm one of those guys. I never want to see something to happen to someone that, I wouldn't want to see it happen to me, right? So I have a late show. He's got a late show. His is on TV. Mine is at night. His is recorded in front of a live studio audience at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and mine is broadcast live on a bunch of radio stations. So in many ways, I feel a little bit of a kindred spirit here, right? I don't want to see the guy lose his job. But at the same time, he's on at the same time I'm on. So less people watching him is potentially more people listening to me, right? I have my own self-interest there. And I don't know if you know this, Joe, but is there a way to apply? Because I'm sure I could do what he's doing for half, and I think I'd be okay at it. I don't know if I'd be as good as him, but I think I'd be okay. What do you think, Joe?
I think you deserve a raise.
From your lips to God's ears. Thank you. I'm hoping everybody at Westwood One and Cumulus heard that. Joe, thank you. You're a good man. I appreciate it, my brother. And we continue our conversation straight ahead with calls from the West Coast, calls from up north, and more. Lines are ringing right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to say to you that I really appreciate what you're doing for people and their state of mind and their viewpoints on the airwaves every night. I really do appreciate it.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. Thank you for being here with us. And I want to thank everybody who leaves any review on our podcast, both my legacy podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez, which is on hiatus but coming back, and the podcast of this very radio show, America at Night, the Rich Valdez America at Night radio podcast. That's available on all the podcast platforms. And people have been incredibly generous and kind with their words and their reviews and their 5-star ratings. So for those of you who have done it, I read those reviews and I thank you for them. Those of you that are listening and sharing, thank you for that as well. And those of you who are considering it, what are you waiting for? Drop the review. We need to hear from you. People, your contemporaries appreciate it. And I love to hear your feedback as well. And of course, I would love to hear feedback from the callers. We, the people, the American people, open phone America. Let's go to Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Michael, go ahead, my man.
Oh, Rich. Hey, it's great to be back. I'm on vacation this week, and I've got a much better work schedule. I'll be able to call in like I used to. I wanted to say President Trump, thank you for the great job you're doing. The first 6 months plus, definitely a solid day for me. Our friend Billy Cunningham points this out many times.
The great American.
Our major cities, yes, and you're a great American, Rich. And our American cities are democratically run by the Democrats, most of them, and they become dysfunctional and dangerous. And I thank President Trump for cleaning up Washington, D.C. I think he's going to do a fine job, but also for the meeting with President Putin. As you know about my girlfriend over there, she's been a bank manager in Zaporizhzhia. And Rich, recently they had a missile attack. They hit a bus stop that she used regularly. Fortunately, she's on her family's farm out in the country helping with their harvest. And I believe President Trump is going to do his very best, and you will see a good settlement between him and President Putin, at least in time. There will be peace that will come from this, and my confidence is in President Trump. So I had to mention that, Rich.
No, really good point, Michael, I thank you for it, and I thank you for listening always. Everybody in Oregon on KUMA, West Coast in the building, and it is, listen, there's a clip of El Trumpito on with Oprah Winfrey back in the 80s, and she says, "Would you run for president, Donald?" And he says, "You know, Oprah, if I ran, I'd say I wouldn't run to lose." And that's why, the same reason I think he wouldn't take the meeting with Putin if he didn't think he was going to get a win. Now, obviously, he's been trying. And now that they've agreed to it, I think they're in a good place. I think Putin, as much as I don't like him, I don't think he's Zelensky. Right? Zelensky showed up to the White House for the sit-down and got into a whole pissing match with J.D. Vance and showed up without a suit and all that stuff. I don't think Putin does that. And that's where I stand on that. Michael in Pendleton. Tony in Montreal. Sorry, brother, the music means I got to go, but you're right. That's been going on for years. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.